Shut up and sit down.
I am a radical libertarian.
I want to go do a damn thing.
Current state of it is sustainable, politically, economically.
You deserve better.
It is about supporting, platforming, and assisting the people who are out here actually doing the fight.
Take an issue that's important to you and do.
There you go.
You are part declaration against tyranny.
Because no one brings tear gas to a gunfight.
This conversation gives me a little more hope for the future. The one, the only.
Fight for liberty. This is the cherry on top.
This is FSM.
Hello, fighters. Welcome back to the Fight for Liberty. I'm your host, David Fite, here to get you fired up about the men and women out here making the world a freer place through politics, activism, business, and more. And tonight I am joined by the best candidate for Mayor Boise, Idaho has ever seen. But first, we're going to give a little bit of love to our sponsors. First and foremost, if my thing will work. There we go. Blood of Tyrants Wine. If you're looking for a nice night in while also sipping on the blood of your enemies and supporting the destruction of the tyrannical state, look no further than Blood of Tyrants Wine. A nice Merlot distributed by activists you know and love. Bloodoftyrants.wine is the place to go. Use promo code FSM to get up 10% off of your first order. Again, that's bloodoftyrants.wine, promo code FSM. And now they have a super cool energy drink that you've probably seen me drinking on the last few episodes, and so you can definitely go check that out too. It's called Liquid Freedom. It's an energy tea, so it's a little bit healthier than your typical energy drinks. That's great product. Go on over, check them out. Next up we have Crafton Business Services. Crafton is dedicated to helping entrepreneurs start, grow, and maintain their businesses with a wide variety of products and services to get your business either started off on the right foot or going stronger than it's ever been. So go on over to crafton.us/start to learn more about how to start a business or PAC or nonprofit or whatever it is you're looking to do with the help of some people that hate the government just as much as you do. But without further ado, joining the fight tonight, the one and only Idaho Joe, Mr. Joe Evans. Welcome to the show.
How are you doing today, David?
I am doing absolutely fantastic. My computer was glitching a little bit through that entire intro, so I'm hoping that looked all right for the people watching, because on my end, the graphics and what I was saying did not match up for almost any of it. But we're good.
Not even close.
Oh man, yeah, because it's not even sending the right thing to you at the moment. But
no, it's not.
Well, I hope
it's all right.
I hope it looks good for you guys. There we go. That looks all right. So I always like to start off with a little bit of a testimonial type question. So how did you find the liberty movement and kind of this anti-establishment vibe?
This one's interesting because one of the things, this goes back to once I got out of the Army. You know, I was looking for a little reinvention, a little recreation, and a little bit of protest against what it was I more or less ended up participating in, and was looking for the anti-war movement, you know, Veterans for Peace, other organizations like that, and started looking around. And initially I went with green. Reason was because the libertarian branding here in the state of Idaho had pretty much been co-opted, except I got involved with the Greens for about a year and a half, about 18 months. It was like all of a sudden it was like, okay, this isn't what I signed up for. I started looking around and I realized one of the things about Idaho is just the full breadth and scope of what the liberty movement here represents. You know, we got a number of individuals across full spectrum that claim to be libertarians. And when I first got involved in the Libertarian Party here in the state of Idaho, it was pretty well-rounded, very oriented on freedom, very oriented on local economics, and a number of things like that. And you're still trying to get this straightened out, aren't you?
Yeah, I think it's more glitchy on the Zoom thing than it is on the actual broadcast, which I guess is better
That's
than the
fine.
other way around. But
Light.
it's weird. I've not had this specific problem ever before, so always a fun
Okay.
time.
We'll work with it.
Yeah.
But I started looking for the anti-war movement and what that represented. And as I was trying to find party associations, groups, and affiliations, and I wandered into the Libertarian Party, full bore back in 2018, because that was my first run for state senate. Ran as a Libertarian candidate with a little tinge of green, and then decided to go ahead and help out the Libertarian parties for the next year, for the next cycle, help maintain ballot access by making sure that there were enough individuals that were running on the ticket. And it created an awful lot of opportunities and a pretty good idea of what it was I wanted to do, as far as individual rights, personal responsibility, anti-war, pro-peace, however it is you want to phrase that, and what it represented for the sovereign citizen in individual rights and liberties. And I really fell into that probably pretty solid about 5.5 years ago.
Nice. I feel like there's a fairly large demographic that went from, not to put this lightly, but from the war movement to the anti-war movement. You know what I mean? There's a lot of people that made that same kind of shift as soon as they were given the freedom to do so.
Well, and a lot of it has to do with the understanding of what was going on with war, what it was we were participating in. Post 9/11, when everything was still real hot, when everybody felt that violation, and it was a big opportunity to strike back, and everybody was angry. The idea was there was something for us to hit, so we took the opportunity to hit it. But as you started going on and understanding what happened, and the fact that we weren't actually angry at the people we were hitting, we were angry at somebody else and using the Afghans and Iraqis basically as a punching bag. You start going, oh, wait, I didn't sign up to punch innocent people. I signed up to punch the jerks. I signed up to punch the people who, knock down the towers. And then you start digging deeper into that, and you're going, the guys who knocked down our towers were our friends or us, depending on which theory you go with on that.
Right.
As you start realizing what the war footing, what the occupation in Iraq and Afghanistan did to the people, the communities, and the organizations, their own self-sustainability, their ability to function independent, what we did to them was absolutely insane. And then as we continue to pay attention to what's going on in the global market, you look at Ukraine, you look at Israel, you look at what's going on with our need to stay involved in war, keep the war economy going. Which is especially ironic because now we have to use the war economy to recover from the COVID economy, and everybody's trying to be the next FDR. And it's like, guys, FDR wasn't the saint we were all told he was.
Right.
So you got to step back and go, well, what are we doing? And one of the problems from my perspective, especially as we continue to go on, is how do we create a holistic sense? Because we're going to have the poverty draft. That's what's keeping the all volunteer service full right now. It's the poverty draft.
Yeah.
doing a lot harder at it right now because there's a lot of people who realize, you know what, the Army doesn't pay me enough for what the Army wants me to do. So maybe I'm just going to stay out and keep living in mom's basement for another 10 years while I go to school or do whatever else I need to do, because housing sucks. Inflation sucks. The job market still sucks. You know, and so you start looking at how do you create a holistic economy, a holistic culture, so that you can keep people out of the poverty draft. So you can keep it so they can recognize what's going on the larger scale, because they're not focused on their next meal.
Yeah.
They're not focused on whether they have a bed to sleep in and whether that bed has a roof over it. You know, and that was one of the reasons why I stepped back and started looking at more local races than I had previously. Why I was looking at city council and why I decided to run for mayor was the fact that a lot of this stuff just wasn't making any sense anymore. Needed to go back to the roots, do leadership at the lowest level, leadership at the city level, and help build and coordinate a culture and an economy at the local level, because we know it's never going to work at the national level, and it's never going to work at the federal level. There's too much corruption at that level.
Yeah, 100% agreed. I think, our generation, or not even my generation, but the following generation is getting a lot of shit for, how long their parents are allowing them to stay in their house. And I feel like that's a big, another big factor to why that, poverty draft isn't working as well anymore. Is, like you said, I'll just stay in my mom's basement for those couple of years instead. And where I remember, like, that was pretty much the main, like, I grew up in a very, very military family. I'm the first person in 7 generations, first male, at least, in 7 generations to not go into the military. And even with all of that, like, patriotism and zeal and all of that other kind of effects on my upbringing and everything, it was the free college, and it was the massive paycheck with no bills for a few years. Like, that's why I wanted to go in. And what kept me from going in is I just didn't want to take 4 or 6 years off of my life plan. I was graduating from high school a year early. I got pretty decent SAT scores going off to college. Like, my goal was to be on Forbes 30 under 30. So I'm like, I can't take 4 years off to just go do something else. I need to go to school, graduate school, get a good job, move up in that job, and be where I want to be before I hit 30. And so, like, completely stupid, selfish, like, not libertarian or like moral reasonings at all for not going in, but it was just complete selfishness that kept me from that. And I dropped out of school less than a year in, and very much diverted that whole timeline that I had laid out for years and years. But it was I'm definitely glad that that I chose to do it the way that I did.
No, and that's one of the things everybody goes through, trying to figure out what their life pattern is, who they really are. I didn't stumble into the liberty movement full-fledged until, I was over 40, 2013. That was 45 years old for me.
Jesus.
I get into,
I didn't realize you were 45 now.
No, I'm 55 right now.
Holy shit. All right. Damn, I thought you were like late 30s, early 40s, my guy.
Well, thank you.
Fucking great, man.
But yeah, I'm 55 right now. And, turned 55 while on the campaign for mayor. And what it was I was looking at as far as a number of different things, all my kids right now, 3 of them are now U.S. veterans. My oldest son's getting ready to come out to Idaho and join the electricians union after spending some time in the U.S. Air Force. my oldest daughter, she's going back into the no, okay. She was in the Army. She's re-enlisting into the Air Force so that her and her husband can be joint assigned on an Air Force base, rather than trying to figure out how to make the Army base, Air Force base, thing work. And my youngest son just joined the Air Force, just graduated basic about 2 weeks ago, and is getting ready to head off to DLI in Monterey, California for language training.
Nice.
So all of my kids, well, 3 of my kids so far, have all participated in the poverty draft because that's the fastest way out of Central Maine. And it's one of those things, it is what it is, but it got them out, it got them skills, and now they're headed back into the market in a way that they feel comfortable with. Unfortunately, in a branch that's relatively safe. So it's not like I'm worried about them. They're not going to be frontline. They're not going to be grunts. They're not going to be combat troops. They're all going to be sitting comfortably in an air-conditioned office or maybe in a penthouse suite somewhere, listening to foreign communications or whatever it is they end up doing. But despite being actively anti-military since getting out, I've had to watch, or in anti-war, I've had to watch 3 of my kids basically repeat my lessons in looking at a way out of the situation we were in. Fastest way, United States military. Gives you the school, gives you the education, gives you an opportunity to see the world. But yeah. So sort of sticks me in an awkward situation, at least as an activist for anti-war, because it's like, aren't your kids? Well, yes, they are. And for that reason alone, it even gives me more reason to want to see peace, world peace. I don't want my kids living through the conflicts in the way that I did. I don't want to see them stuck in an Afghan scenario. I don't want to see them stuck in an Iraq scenario. I don't want my kids, grandkids, still walking around in Ukraine or Israel.
Yeah. That would be insane, but unfortunately, it looks like that's also completely and totally possible.
Oh, yeah.
Which is rough. I have quite a few friends who are currently getting deployed to the general area. Some people headed to Kuwait. I know a couple of Navy people are out in like the Black Sea and the Persian Gulf, and we're getting close. Not actually sending anyone there per se, but we are very, very close, and we're up in the ante on it. And the Marines canceled their annual ball this year, which I find very strange. I was even talking to my dad about it, who's a Marine, and he was like, "They never They've had that while we were actively at war every fucking time. Like we did it on the ship, like at the same time as they had it there. Like we've always, like, it's just what do you mean they canceled it?" I was like,
any deployment where they have a chow hall, they're going to find a way to do the cake and do the ball. That's just what it is. And for them to look at this situation and go, you know what? I think for the purpose of readiness, we're not going to let the Marine Corps get drunk this year. And there's something wrong with that.
Yeah. I think it was supposed to be like tomorrow, I want to say. I think it was like the 16th or something like that. So, it looks like they probably would have been all right. Because we hadn't done anything yet. But yeah, it's kind of terrifying to think of, something that's been a tradition for 250 something years, getting canceled for readiness sake when everyone in Washington is still claiming that we're not at war and we're not going to war anytime soon.
Right. Except we know better. Our politicians want the wartime economy. They want to be able to use that as a way to take care of the problems that they've created as a result of COVID. So we're busy trying to do the whole bounce back thing by bombing the rest of the world into the Stone Age. The question is how far FDR are we going to go?
Right.
And who's the president that's actually going to take us there? Because you step back, take a look at Biden. Biden's a Democrat. FDR was a Democrat. There's an argument for him actually being the one to do that. Trump was in a position to do it when he was president. Of course, he was also the one who released the, significant amount of money for the COVID relief.
Mm-hmm.
So more than anyone, he would have been the one, post COVID to actually look at full wartime footing in order to recover. The fact that Biden and his friends are taking so long to actually come back around to that, I think is a lot of, they just can't decide who the enemy is supposed to be.
Right. Well, it's us.
Well, yeah, of course it's us. Homegrown, are we looking at China? Are we looking at Russia? Who's the big bad boogeyman? No, it's the Boogaloo Boys. It's like, really? Come on, guys. And one of the
uniform today.
One of the great ironies of this is, we're starting to see an awful lot of people on the left and in the authoritarian and in center authoritarian looking at the military and going, the reason why there's so much violence in America, is because of all the veterans. The veterans are the reason for the violence. And while they're going around saying, veterans need to be registered and, dealt with, and they shouldn't have guns and all that, and they're saying, we need to send people to Ukraine. We need to send people to Israel. And it's like, bro, slow down here a moment. One, you're talking about making more of the people you want registered.
Yep.
Now, you're going to say to your neighbor, I want you to go over to Israel, or I want you to go over to Ukraine and kill people and get PTSD and then come back where I'm going to lock you in a cell because you're a danger to society. I don't think they're going to have much luck with that particular approach.
Yeah. I'd imagine not. It is very strange. I'm curious if that's kind of intentional, though. It's like a 1-2 punch policy of if they can sneak in some of that crazy anti-veteran policy within the next 6 to 12 months before it's active wartime, then they can create a fuck ton more veterans to then have their Second Amendment rights and a bunch of other things stripped away from them and be registered and kind of corralled. They get to take all of the likely most of the most extremist right-wingers in America and get to send them off to possibly just kill them off. And if that doesn't work, they'll all come back registered with PTSD and all this other stuff. But we won't kind of see it as a combined thing if they do it a year or two apart from each other.
Well, and that's interesting because you already take a look at what they've done with 50% of the population in the United States. When they overturned Roe versus Wade and they started looking at, overturn the 19th Amendment or repeal the 19th Amendment. And you're going, well, right now, how many states is it on the verge of being illegal to have a miscarriage?
Yeah.
You got the people saying, no, it's only about, no, dude, I've seen the way the authoritarians run. I've seen the way they work. And before too much longer, every miscarriage will involve, a month-long investigation by a police officer and a DA, and they're going to catch the poor girl right after the miscarriage. And she's going to admit that it was all her fault, regardless of what happened. And next thing you know, she's just lost her rights. She's lost her rights to vote. She now can't carry a gun because she's now a felon in at least, 16 of the states right now. And all because she didn't have the sense of being after the trauma of a miscarriage to keep her mouth shut on the issue.
Yeah.
So we're already looking at, we've just criminalized half of America right there.
Yeah.
The next step, those people who are willing to go to war to fight for their nation. We talk about that. How do we create a situation? Well, everybody's already saying, he's a veteran. All veterans got PT. Well, no, they don't all have PTSD. No, they do not all have anxiety when they come back. No, they're not all angry. But they're still setting up this stereotype. So when they come back, it's like we're already second-class citizens. We come back, our health insurance is through the VA. We've already been registered. Our DNA has been documented 50 ways from Sunday. We have a file on us, with the Veterans Health Association, whatever branch we were in. Chances are, if you were high enough rank, you got a file, sitting in 5 other countries, that recognizes you as an individual of interest, at least on some level. You take time to even get involved in politics. You just added another thing onto your list. So you continue to see them try and say, okay, well, we can't have the liberty extremists because they're going to take away our power. They're going to take away our control. And it's like one of the things we fought for, one of the things we talked about when we look at going into the military, to defend America's rights, to defend the rights of American citizens, to promote freedom around the world.
Right.
We got the people sending us off to war going, you know what, that freedom thing that they keep, no, I don't like them having that freedom thing that they keep talking about, because if they have freedom, that means we don't have control.
Right. Yeah, I'm glad you brought up that point about abortion, because I was actually just having this conversation I think yesterday on I think I was on Clubhouse or Twitter Space, one of the two. But
Yeah.
I was talking to a couple of pro-lifers, and I was like, it doesn't matter if it's what you're currently advocating for. What matters is where the state is going to take this at its inevitable conclusion.
Oh, yeah.
And there's no way that if you criminalize abortion, that you won't have people miscarrying on purpose. That is the logical next step to criminalizing abortion and not being able to go to a doctor to do it. Is, I have friends, even though it was legal, they didn't want it on their doctor's reports, didn't want their parents to know, got pregnant at like 16, 17, whatever. I have one friend who was just telling me this story a couple days ago. She smoked an entire pack of cigarettes, drank a liter of vodka between her and her friend, and literally got pushed down the stairs.
Right.
And took a pregnancy test 2 days later, came back negative. And there you go. You can't tell me that shit's not going to happen even more once you add the legal element to it. And so if an abortion is illegal, that sure as shit should be illegal too. Like there's no logical way to defend doing that. If you think abortion is murder, then so is that. So now you have to, are these miscarriages on purpose? Are they doing something wrong? Are they still drinking? Are they still smoking? Are they doing this other thing?
Well, that's an interesting topic, because we actually criminalize that. In most states, let's take California, for example. In California, okay, you can have an abortion. You can walk into a doctor's office and have it removed legally. However, if you have a miscarriage through abusing your body, whether you're on meth, whether you did it with alcohol, whether you did it with cocaine, whether you did it with something else. Okay. And it can be proven that you intentionally created a condition in your body that was inhospitable to the baby, and it caused the baby to be born with an addiction, or the baby was miscarried as a result of your addiction.
Mm-hmm.
They will send you to prison.
Right.
If you're a meth addict and you miscarry, and they can tell that the baby was a meth addict when you miscarried, you're going to prison.
Yeah.
And that leads back to one of those situations is like, if it's your body and it's your choice and you want to get high to the point where you end up miscarrying, it is your body, right? Well, according to most of the states in the United States, it's not.
Yeah.
But that's one of those things that we look at. We actually criminalize a significant amount of behavior that puts a fetus at risk if it's not an actual intentional abortion.
That is very, very strange conundrum of. I feel like that kind of makes sense to a point, because it's like discouraging more dangerous behavior to the mother, and if you're potentially unsuccessful at intentionally miscarrying, then you're giving birth to a pretty fucked up individual. Like I can kind of sort of see the logic, but I feel like that fairly easily fits into the same kind of like 1-2 punch thing that I was just talking about, of like, while abortion is fully legal and Roe v. Wade exists, they can criminalize all of these other things because, well, you can just go get an abortion. Why would you do this other stuff? This is just inhumane. And then they yank Roe v. Wade, and yeah, to your point, we don't even have to have these couple of steps of tyranny. If they legalize, or if they criminalized abortion in California, it would instantly go to exactly what we're describing as, the worst case scenario of this. I don't know. Yeah, it's very interesting when they do these kinds of. It makes sense now, and then this other thing makes sense, kind of, sorta. But when you combine them and look at them both, it's terrible and terrifying.
So let's step back. I live in Idaho, one of the few states with a zero tolerance abortion policy. One of the second tier effects, of course, of that policy is right now, maternal mortality rate is going up. Infant mortality rate is going up. Why is it going up? Well, because we no longer have prenatal care. A number of the OBGYNs who'd normally be providing health care for the mothers are leaving the state.
Right.
Okay? They don't want to deal with the possibility that they may have to facilitate an abortion for the health and welfare of the mother, and then go through a kangaroo court that decides whether or not they get to keep their license. They're just going somewhere else to practice.
Makes sense.
So we no longer have that care for the mothers. We no longer have that prenatal care for the child. So we are seeing women who know that the likelihood of their pregnancy is going to be high risk, deciding they don't want to risk a high risk pregnancy in a state where maternal care is becoming very, very difficult to get. And they're literally crossing the border and saying, I'm not going to deal with it, but I can't leave Idaho. Our border towns with the clinics, they've seen 1,000% increase.
Wow.
In cross-border participation for abortions. They're going across the border, that's not, you think about it, previously it was 3 abortions, now it's 30 abortions, that they're going across the border to get. But these are the things that we're looking at. And in addition to that, one of the big things right now is the abortion trafficking law in the state of Idaho. The idea that you can't take somebody across the border to get them an abortion without coming back and dealing with felony charges. Ironically, the one case where that's actually presented itself as an option, they didn't need to because everything they did was illegal anyway. Which is another one that's really extremely surprising, because people on the left and the right are both saying Idaho's abortion trafficking law is a success because we're putting people into prison for it. No, well, no. You had a minor. She's 15. He was 18. Him and his mother took her at 15 across the border. That's crossing the state lines with a minor child that's not in your custody. They are going away for a very long time for a number of reasons, including kidnapping, interstate trafficking of a minor. Her nudes were on his phone, so he's going away for that too. And not once, the DA's not even looking at our anti-trafficking bill. It's hilarious watching the left and right, celebrate something that the DA is not even going to touch because it hasn't been vetted through the SCOTUS. It hasn't been vetted through, it's.
Yeah, because if you put them away on that and SCOTUS ends up changing their mind and scratching that law, he could potentially let this guy out completely if you add that charge where if they just leave it alone, it's a safe bet this guy stays in jail. So yeah, definitely a good move on the DA's part. Not that that's the first time I think I've ever said that on the show. 170 something episodes in before I complimented DA.
Well, that was one of my situations. It's like I'm looking at it and I'm going, this is an opportunity to take this particular law, this brand new legislation, to the Supreme Court of the United States and see whether or not it's valid.
Yeah.
And one of my lawyer friends is looking at it and going, yeah, and that's why the DA is not doing it.
Yeah. Yeah, because he gets to become all of them just get to become this media champion of the left, taking this case to SCOTUS, and as usual, the left will completely be fine with championing a child predator and being like, "Woohoo! Yeah, good job, guys. Let's do the thing."
But this is one of those things. Right now we're looking at loss of freedom, loss of rights.
Mm-hmm.
What state do you live in, David?
I'm in New York at the moment.
You're in New York. Okay. This one's going to be absolutely fun for you. So the Ninth Circuit Court, which is Western United States, this was one of the reasons why I actually ran for mayor. Ninth Circuit Court, back about 2013, there was a case, Martin versus Boise. And in Martin versus Boise, what they did was they took it to the Ninth Circuit Court because the police were arresting you for sleeping in public. Okay. You were homeless. You couldn't afford rent. You couldn't afford a hotel. You couldn't afford to live in a home. So you catch a nap wherever you can. Well, the police started arresting and ticketing people for being homeless, for sleeping in public. And we had some lawyers get together with the homeless guys and say, okay, we don't think this is cool. And they took it to the Ninth Circuit Court, and the Ninth Circuit Court said, yeah, you're right. That's not cool. You cruel and unusual punishment. You're creating an unreasonable burden because they already can't afford a place to sleep, and you're going to lock them up. Right. If you lock them up, how are they going to get a job? If they did have a job and you locked them up for sleeping in public because they were working homeless, well, now they lost their job, and they're in an even tougher spot. So the Ninth Circuit Court said, no, you can't bust them for sleeping in public, on public land, just because they're homeless. Vagrancy laws no longer apply in Ninth Circuit Court, which is Western Idaho or Western U.S. Now, Grant Pass was looking in that and going, okay, so we can't ticket him, but we're going to go and take all their stuff. We're going to civil asset forfeiture their tent and their blankets and their pillows. And Ninth Circuit Court looked at that and went, yeah, you're not going to do that either. So now we got a bunch of Western cities that are dealing with homeless issues, San Francisco, LA, the rest of them, that don't want to create homeless shelters. They don't want to house the homeless, and they don't want to they just want them to go away. They've decided that they're going to challenge it. They want to challenge it and take it to the Supreme Court. Now, the thing is if the Supreme Court upholds Martin versus Boise, New York cops can no longer arrest people for vagrancy in New York City.
That would be interesting. Yeah, because this whole time you're talking, I was like, man, it sounds kind of nice to live in the Ninth Circuit. Because, like, fuck, we don't have any of that shit. We somehow stop and frisk, but even that we didn't really stop. We stopped it. We just said you have to make up an excuse first. like that's really all we did to stop and frisk. You can still get pulled over or get stopped because they think they saw you come out of a store that's a known place that people sell drugs or something like that. Like, that was a common thing. They would just like wait outside of bodegas that they knew sold weed, or even if the bodega didn't, they could just be like, it looks like a sketchy enough bodega that we can kind of sort of accuse them of being like on our radar, and then we'll arrest them. Or, if you're coming out of like a fucking Adidas store or something like that, it's like,
I'm trying to remember which court it was that decided you can't use the smell excuse anymore. You can't just walk up to somebody and say, what's that smell? Empty your pockets.
Yep.
You can't do that anymore.
Still had it happen multiple times though.
Oh yeah. What's that smell? Empty your pockets.
I remember that happened less than a year after I started smoking weed. So that was, I think that had to have been like 2016, 2015, somewhere in there, somewhere early on before I really actually became much of a stoner. I remember that happening. And I still had a couple of times where I got pulled over and, what's that smell in the car? Like, that, nothing. You're not allowed to ask me that, and it didn't fucking matter. It never matters. It didn't help that I was usually driving on a suspended license during that time, so they did have the right to ask me for my license. I mean, they don't, but they pretend that they do, right? And so that's still an excuse to search the car every time, even if they didn't. They couldn't use the smell excuse. But yeah, I mean, I've seen people get arrested for vagrancy in New York more times than I can count. Like, I used to be a New York City homeless person. I used to sleep in a storage unit in Woodside, Queens. And like, yeah, the people don't understand how many people, like, you might go out to eat and be waited on by a homeless person.
Oh yeah.
Like, that's, especially in 2023, like, especially if you live in a decent sized city of any kind, even like 100,000 people or more, there's a very high likelihood that you're going out to eat and you're getting served, or the food's being cooked by somebody who doesn't actually have a legitimate, like a real house. Like, they're either on the streets or like in a garage or an underpass or a tent city or something like that. And
or hopefully couch surfing it,
Yeah, maybe couch surf. I did that for a little while.
Yeah,
and like, people don't understand how impossible it is to get from that to anything else, or even to just maintain that. Like, you think working 40 hours a week is tough. Try working 40 hours a week when you're not sleeping 2/3 of the week, like, at all.
Where you got to be at the homeless shelter in order to get a bed at a specific time. Okay. If your work isn't a work schedule that allows you to make it there on time, you got to find someplace else to sleep.
Yeah. When I was working in Brooklyn, I had a coworker who was homeless, and staying in a shelter in downtown Manhattan, and there were plenty of nights where he would crash at my place, or another one of our friends' place, because it was basically he could either go get a bed or he could go out drinking with us after work. And so if we invited him out drinking after work, that meant that we had to let him crash at our place. Like, that was just kind of like a known thing. Like, someone's gotta let Eddie crash tonight because we want to go get him drunk, because and the thing is, he was one of the better people in the office. He wasn't making nothing, but he definitely wasn't making enough to start himself off in a New York City apartment. And we worked in the jobs we did because you could get it with a criminal record. So he was like fresh out of like a 3-year stint in jail because he got caught with a semi full of cigarettes coming from Virginia to New York, like a whole fucking semi full. But yeah, like it was, so it's not like we had to buy him drinks or anything like that. Like, he was still like a normal friend. He just, lived in Bowery. And like, that was just that kind of, I was homeless before this job. So, I was already somewhat aware of it, but he was just like the most put together homeless person I had met up until then. And just if you only interacted with him at work, you wouldn't really be able to tell. Just might think he doesn't shower all that often, which not totally uncommon. Especially if you're hanging out with libertarians, you're just very used to that. We all look homeless anyway, so.
Okay. They are about to kick me out of the office I'm in right now. Okay. So give me a moment. I'm going to go ahead and swap over to the phone so we can keep this on while I pack.
All right. Well, tell people where they can find you, what you're up to. What's the next thing?
The next thing is, one, Idaho Joe has got to stop being homeless. But you can find me on Idaho Joe for Idaho on Twitter. Currently working on trying to develop a website that I'm more consistent with, as well as working on helping independent candidates get their ballot access in the state of Idaho for the 2024 election. They're currently got 120 days if they're running with a party that does not have ballot access. So people that are working, there we go. So those people, let's go ahead and kill the echo. So those people who are working on getting independent candidates like RFK Jr., Cornell West, candidates like that on the ballot in the state of Idaho for full national coverage, that we deal with every year, or like Jill Stein, working on helping them get going. Currently working directly, with the campaign to help get Chase Oliver, the LP nominee. So I'm working with his camp on that. Medical marijuana, Kind Idaho. Keep looking for what Kind Idaho is doing in the state of Idaho. Legalization for medical and patient advocacy. And once we get the medical taken care of, we'll probably be looking at some other sort of legalization for patient advocacy as we look at the options that are currently illegal because Big Pharma can't profit off of them.
Right.
Things like psilocybin, being able to work with medical and being able to make sure that those organizations, those people have the access to the best medicine that works for them, that's affordable for them. We're getting a little bit tired of Big Pharma saying, hey, we need you to spend $1,000 a month on medicine only does half of what nature will do for you. You know, so we're looking at taking care of that, seeing what we can do on that front. But yeah, the big thing is pay attention to what's going on Twitter. Liberty movement still moves on. You know, the anti-war movement still moves on. There are things that we need to do as Americans. There are things we need to do as citizens to make sure that our government is held accountable. And whether that means running it local, running it national, running it state, you know, doing what we can to make sure that things that our representatives, that our elected officials know that we're paying attention. You know, these are the things we got to do. And, you know, whether you're looking at it from a libertarian liberty movement perspective or whether or not you're just looking at it as a citizen, you know, are your taxes being spent wisely? You know, I know an awful lot of people. They're not libertarians. They don't see themselves as libertarian, but they really want their taxes. They want the people who spend their taxes held accountable. Right. You know, and we're seeing more and more of this as we go on. And it's like we need to make sure that we keep moving this direction. And what that means in the next year, I probably will not be running myself in 2024 because I am helping so many other people right now. But when it comes time to come back around 2026, we'll see what the opportunities look like.
Hell yeah. I love it. Guys, definitely go check out everything that Joe is doing. He has always been one of my favorite people to follow on Twitter. So go definitely follow him. His handle's right down there. You can see it. You've been seeing it the whole time. If you haven't followed him already, you're a schmuck. But definitely check him out. Also, don't forget to like this video because I get paid for it if you like it. If you're watching this on Rumble, if you're not watching this on Rumble, go watch it on Rumble. And if this is as shitty as I think it probably was, it was recording the whole time, so there's a version of it that looks as good as it all did for me the whole time, which on my end it looked great. So I will be uploading that when we're done because I'm sure this wasn't super great. And then come on back because next week we have former chairman of the Mises Caucus, now campaign manager for Michael Rechtenwald for president, Mr. Michael Heiss, coming on the show. Following up after that is Tyler Morrison, a great comedian out of, I believe, Ohio. I think. Shoot, I should know that. I'll know that by in 2 weeks, I promise. But come on, check that out. It's a great show. He's a really funny comedian who does a lot of pretty dark humor, which, as you can probably tell, is what I like. What you guys like, otherwise you wouldn't be watching my show. So come on back for that. It'll be great. Joe, thanks so much for doing this. This was absolutely fantastic. It's nice to hear from you again.
It's great being here tonight, David. You take care of yourself, stay safe, and if they overturn Martin versus Boise, stay off the streets of New York.
I definitely will.